Hey, Link here. Thanks for joining me for episode 110, where I speak of Isadora Sophia. In this episode, we talk about how they got into making games, words of encouragement, games that got them wanting to make games, why they created their own engine, games that might not hold up from their childhood, their life outside of games, some lightning round questions, and what makes gaming enjoyable to them. Before we get started, don't forget there are links in the episode description that you can follow to learn more about Isadora as well as the podcast. Also, don't forget to like and share the episode, and without further ado, enjoy episode 110. Hi, and welcome to the Red Tunic Podcast, a podcast where I look to rediscover what makes gaming fun and enjoyable by having positive conversations with those related to the industry. My name is Link, and today I'm joined by Isadora Sophia, co-founder at Coldblood Inc., and the recently announced Neverway. Hi, Isadora. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing very well. Thank you.
That's great here, and hey, it's Friday, so like I imagine that's an even better doing well kind of thing instead of like the
Yes.
middle or beginning of the week.
Yes, I love Fridays.
Um, I think all of us love Fridays, so that's yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I can stand behind that statement.
Yes,
Um,
yes. Yeah.
so Isadora, before we get started, would you mind telling me and anyone listening a little bit about yourself, kind of like the elevator pitch or like the 411 of just like who you are, the important things that you feel people should just know about you right from the start kind of thing.
Okay. So I'm Isadora. I'm originally Brazilian. That's also interesting. And then I started working actually Microsoft. So I worked in Microsoft for 6 years. And it was all on developer tools. And then I switched to games. So I really do love advocating for tools in games and just making games itself. And I recently co-founded Coldblood Inc. And we announced Neverway. So that's been lots of fun.
So thank you for sharing that. And I'm curious because I've I haven't spoken to a lot of people that have kind of had that kind of trajectory that you have. So like, can you speak to maybe how you went from, or however you would like to take this question, but like
Uh-huh.
going from tools at Microsoft to making games?
Yeah. So I don't know, like making two, like for me, I just love programming. So I could have fun with a lot of things around programming. Like I had an internship that I was literally working on a thing that automated tax forms and I still had fun. So I think it's a lot on the culture and the team. So inside Microsoft, I started doing DevTools. So I work on the Visual Studio Debugger. And the team was awesome. And I learned a lot from a lot of different people. But I think the most interesting thing, and that's where I think it relates to games, is that I was always using the stuff that I was working on. So I was working on the debugger, and then we used debugger to debug the code. So I was always using the software that I was just developing. So I knew exactly what I wanted, and every time I worked on a feature, I knew how the customer in that case would feel because that would be me. And I think with games, this happened a lot too, where I'm making something and I think what people would like, and I think what I would like to to see in a game. But the way I actually started in games, so I started in Microsoft, and just because I love the team, I love learning, and I knew I had to learn a lot in programming, and especially designing architectures, and that's what happened. And but while I was like 4 or 5 years in Microsoft, I started working on side projects with Pedro, just about game things. And I did some game stuff in college, but I never looked too much into it after I graduated. But then after I started working with Pedro, just like on the like a custom engine or like other random prototypes, I started to realize that I really enjoyed, and I think I really enjoyed the part that we were doing something together and we could see it moving. and it was just fun and it made a lot of sense. And I also, my favorite thing is always learning, and I learned so much from Pedro too because he's very experienced. He shipped a lot of games, so there was so much knowledge that I suddenly had to figure out for games, like how do you make a dialogue system, and like how do you make a good tooling. And a lot of the knowledge that I had from all my previous experience, suddenly it was very transferable. So I really enjoyed that. And then at some point, it just made sense to continue doing it. And then I was okay. I think I need to do this full time. Like this is I need more time to work on this, so we can actually ship a game. And that's at the point that we just okay, let's do Coldblood Inc. and just go to a game and then turn out to be Neverway. And it's been really fun ever since we did that.
So thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
like, I I like the idea of what you said about how you were using debugger to debugger, which
Yeah.
to me is hilarious just
Yeah.
because like you're using the tool to fix the tool to figure out what's wrong with the tool.
Yeah.
Um, but as someone who had spent a lot of time going uh through debuggers, through like Visual Studio debuggers, specifically years ago, um, I thank you for the work that you put into
Oh,
working on debuggers. Like, I can't fathom the patience and what have you to like do that. And like I just know that anyone that is able to do that and help make the thing that I'm trying to do to figure out my
yeah.
dumb mistakes, like that's just an awesome feat. So like I'm sure anyone that, and this goes out to anyone that works on debuggers, obviously, but like I'm sure that anyone that has worked with a debugger would very well, just be more than happy to say thank you for making things a little saner or a little easier.
Thank you.
Because like it's not easy, and it's really hard to fix dumb broken things when you get over ambitious and then start wondering
Yes.
what's wrong with you. Um,
Yes. And I love how like it makes a lot of complicated, very complicated problems suddenly simpler because you have all these tools to visualize the data. So a lot of the times we did something which was very, very, very complex, but it didn't look that complex sometimes. It's just, oh, of course, it's here. And then we take for granted, but I don't know. But I really do think it pays off and saves so much time. And I also use, so I know how much it helps.
like rare is it a time where you can just give yourself a pat on the back. However, this is a perfect one when you're working with, trying to fix them. You go, oh yeah, I did this. This is me. You can, pat
Oh,
yourself on the back.
I love hot reload. I used to own hot reload feature, so that's my number one feature. Like I use it all the time in the game, just like but in C sharp.
Um, I'm not gonna lie, it's been a while since I've had to use a Visual Studio
Uh,
debugger. So like I'm unfamiliar with the feature as it is. For your own context, I work on a mainframe. I do mainframe stuff. So
uh-huh.
like we don't I have to be careful how I say this. We have a debugger.
Okay.
There's only a few debuggers that
Oh, I
exist
see. I
for it.
see. Mm-hmm.
So like and the way that it works, it's a mainframe.
Uh-huh.
They're not really nice features. And they're not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's you're happy you get what you get is
Yes.
basically what I'm
Yeah.
saying, because the
Uh-huh.
alternative is like a million little notifications screaming at you every time it does something, which doesn't help when you're trying to figure out something very specific, right? Um, so like, sorry, what I'm getting is I'm not overly familiar with the features. However, I'm
Uh-huh.
happy that you have a feature that you are happy with and it works, and you know you have use for it, and you can that you maybe contributed to it.
Yeah, I think my least favorite part in the debugger was probably when I was trying to figure out a bug, and then I found a bug in the debugger that was in my way. So I had to fix the bug in order to fix the other bug. That was my least favorite thing.
So, from personal experience, for someone that is on a project that's been going for several years because I kicked open a can of worms, and then I kicked open another can of worms,
Uh-huh.
and then another and another and another, and I basically had to get all the worms and get rid of them and close up all the
Yes.
cans. I I can empathetically relate to the how that would feel.
Yes.
I
Yes.
can very much relate to so, my deepest sympathies for what you had to go through every time you found another can of worms in your way and going, "Well, I guess I have to kick this one open too, I guess."
Yeah, and sometimes this happens in games, but it's more rare. But it's usually like we have this really cool idea and we are in the middle of the implementation and writing content. And then suddenly there is a bug on one of our tools. And then we have to stop the whole content thing and just fix it too. And I usually like doing the two, but then the context switch, I get so angry. I'm like, oh, fine. And then I'll fix the other thing.
Again, yes, I can empathetically relate to that, and it's
Yeah.
even worse when it's a thing you've done that gets in your way, right?
Yeah.
When
Yes.
you're like, "Oh, this is my mistake that was never caught a year ago." Oh, well, damn.
There are a couple of bugs that I just have workarounds. I'm like, I'm not gonna fix this, and then there's just workarounds and a lot of comments saying I'm sorry. And
Like, again, I empathetically can relate to just jamming a kludge in and saying, "Well, this will be my problem in 5 years. I can be mad at myself then."
yeah, yeah,
Um, but no, again, is it thank you for for walking through that and like, the getting from the tools to making games, um, and such. I'm I'm curious though, because like you mentioned that you were um sorry, I for whatever reason, my brain is doing a weird thing here now. You mentioned that, like, when you were working on tools and such, you started working with Pedro, and you, like, started making actual little games or working towards stuff that would be used for games. I'm wondering, was that like, when you got into developing and making games, or did that come, like, before that, and this was, like, a time and a chance to actually put some of that experience to use? If that makes any sense the way I'm phrasing that. I know it can be that sounds a little, diminishing the way I'm phrasing it, but it's not the intent.
yeah. That's okay. Before I had experience, but it was in college and was with Unity. So I had a lot of Unity games that I didn't really know what I was doing, and I think it was a time that I was very unexperienced with programming in general. So a lot of the things I would do, I would go on tutorials on YouTube and see, oh, how do I do this in Unity? And then it's like my brain couldn't absorb the information. I would do stuff, but it wouldn't be as good. And I think at the point that I started to just do random things with Pedro, I was at a point that I no longer like I don't copy paste code or just watch videos. I just read the documentation and try to figure out. And that's all thanks to my experience. So it was way easier to do. And it was like everything I learned, like it helped a little bit, but all the game stuff that I did, it wasn't that useful as my experience just being a software engineer and like architecting stuff and doing a lot of learning, of course, too, like just in games, but it was a lot of like learning from scratch almost. But it was so interesting to me.
So, as someone that can't just absorb information and do that, that's fascinating to me that your solution was, "Well, I just read the documentation and go from there." Like, that's wild. So, like, awesome. I I don't know what to say to that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
that's one of the reasons like we could kind of like just do our own engine, like we use our own engine, our own tools. And I think because I like a lot of using Unity, for me it was just reverse engineering what the engine wanted me to do, and it was just easier, like, okay, let's just do the thing ourselves and it would take longer to get to the point where we are actually fast, but it's going to be worth it in the long run.
and yes, I understand what you're
Yeah,
saying, and
yeah.
it's still just blowing my mind that
Yeah.
that like I know that there's a lot of people that talk about making their own engine. and
Uh-huh.
I've seen more people not make their own engine, and I've seen more people actually advise against making your own engine unless you have like very specific needs or what
Yeah.
have you. And it's just it's wild to me that you're like, well, yeah, I got too tired of reverse engineering Unity, so I just did it myself. Like just a wild thing, that's I'm happy that it works for you. I can't begin to fathom or understand how your brain works to be able to do that. So I'm in awe, basically, is what I'm trying to get at in
Thank
all of
you.
this. Um, and I'm also wondering from your experiences, and not to go against what I just said,
Uh,
or let me phrase that. By all means, if your advice is, the kind of wisdom you would share is actually, well, make your own engine. And by all means, feel free to go against what I just said because I don't know these things. I just go from what I've read and what's seen people saying or what have you. But like, do you have any words of wisdom that you could share from like everything you've been through and everything you've learned, or another way to maybe look at the question, if if you were going to talk to yourself from like 10 years ago, like, is there any advice that you would give yourself for your path forward kind of thing?
like I think it's a lot about timing. If you can afford the time, because you do spend a lot of time you wouldn't otherwise when you make your own thing. But like if you don't have to release a game right away or you don't have a lot of tech debt, like I would say it's absolutely worth it to put it the time in, because in the long run, it, you're so much faster and it helps you, and you're always leveraging the things you previously did. And even if you did something wrong, you're always learning from what you learned that you did wrong. Um, but yeah, it's hard to come up with an advice specifically, but I would say like an encouragement, like it is worth to put the time in, and even though it seems very small progress, it really pays off in the long run.
So thank you for that. I like the little twist that you did there, and I think that's going to be something I'm going to maybe steal. Is also add in like 4 words of encouragement because, like you said, it's not always easy to give advice or like what have you because a whole bunch of different reasons, right? And
Mhm.
but thank you. I like the idea of words of encouragement or like what have you. So I'm going to
Yeah.
steal that for the future. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now, I am curious as well because, like, I don't. Sorry, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. I'm terrible with transitions. I want to be very clear on that. So, I was trying to make like a nice, smooth transition to this from like everything you had said, but I'm sucking. So what
Yeah,
I'm just
that's
going
all
to
right.
ask is, I'm just going to ask it this way. Like when you were playing around in Unity, um, when you eventually started working with Pedro and then Coldblood and what have you, like to from point A to point B or even before point A or what have you. Like, did you have any games that you played when you were younger and you were like, "Oh, this is a cool thing. I wish I could do this," or "I would like to do this." Like, were there any games that made you like start to float in that direction or be interested in the industry or what have you?
So that's it's interesting because the games that I really love as a child, they don't literally translate well nowadays. For example, I love Neopets. And that's probably like one that shaped me the most. I played Neopets for 10 years. It's probably the reason I do computer engineering, because I did CSS. And there's something in Neopets that I think it could be translatable to like nowadays, and not necessarily as an online thing, but there was something there. And I think it's like the essence of like they have their own universe there, and they have different games, and they have so many different mechanics that build on top of each other. And I found it so interesting. I could like go very deep in very random things, and this like literally lasted 10 years. So I just like this idea of very different systems, mechanics, and they all have a common theme, and you could spend time on them. And that really fascinates me. And I would say that influenced me on how I do games nowadays.
So Thank you for sharing that. And a few questions. So I too also spent a lot of time on Neopets when I was younger, and I learned about CSS and HTML editing because of Neopets, and I think probably for the
Yes.
same reason that you did. So I'm wondering, how many scrolling marquees did you actually have in your Neopets store?
Oh, don't remember.
So that too many is what you're saying then.
Yeah, probably. I did have a lot of avatars. I collected so many avatars.
Um, but no, thank you. That's wonderful. I like that. I like the idea of Neopets being your um being like one of the foundations for making you start down the path of being like a programmer or making games or what have you. Um, like I wish I could say that that I had the same kind of encouragement or what have you from Neopets. What I personally took from Neopets was socialism with the whole,
Oh,
free
yeah.
omelet.
Yeah.
um,
Oh, yeah.
that's
And the
that
soup.
was my main takeaway.
Yeah, there was also the soup fairy.
Yes, yes, I don't have as many memories of the Super Fairy. If I'm not mistaken, the Super Fairy was a random thing that would like, just happen, was it not?
No, I think you could go to the soup fairy and she would also give you soup. And you also had the money tree that you could just donate items and then you get items.
Right, yes, yes, if you were lucky, you had to time it
Yeah,
right, otherwise there
yeah.
weren't any items, right? You had to give to get, or you
Oh,
had to
yeah.
hope that you got on time to get when you gave or what have you.
One interesting thing I don't see games nowadays doing in that it exists in Neopets, they have all these avatars and they wouldn't say how to get an avatar. So they would just say, oh, we released this avatar, by the way. And then the avatar didn't have any implications in game, like you only used for like cosmetic. You had a fancy avatar, but everyone mobilized so they could find out how to get that avatar, and it could be random, it could be through playing a game, it could be through anything. And just the mysterious part of it was really intriguing, and I don't know, it's such an interesting concept to me.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, like the social aspect of learning about what's like hidden inside the game, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And like you,
but
you
no,
had a little trophy you could showcase your success, like, oh, here's my avatar because I spent 40 hours just feeding Katos and
so I unfortunately stopped playing before avatars were a thing, I think, or if they existed when I was there, I had no idea about them. So
Uh,
that's a wild thing that they added that. Like when I played, most of it was just playing the little flash mini games and um
uh-huh.
hoping I had enough money to feed my pets. Um, well, I usually didn't. I remember
Yeah,
having to
yeah.
like put several up for adoption or what have you because I was allowed to have like 10 and I could only feed like 2.
Yes. Or
I
you,
was a
you could put
horrible pet
them,
owner.
yeah, you could put them in the cheap hotel, but I also feel bad. You pay like 5 Neo points.
That might have been what I did. I might be misremembering, and that could have been what it was. It wasn't adopting, it was like putting them in suspended animation
Yeah.
for no money or whatever.
Yeah, but that was one of my favorite things. Like you play Neopets and you didn't even see a lot of the systems, and you don't have to. Like they're almost optional, and it's how much energy you want to put in the thing. And I don't know. I just like the idea of having a lot of different systems, and you can choose how you want to play and exist in this universe.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. I agree because like you get to kind of craft what you get. You get to craft your own experience, right? Like if you're
Yeah,
someone that and this is kind of just in general, right? For like a big game system as a whole, but if you're someone that, likes just running a store, Neopets let you run a store.
yeah,
If you were someone that liked pit fighting with your Neopets, similar to Pokemon, well, there was pit fights that you could do too and let them get beat up and everything.
yeah.
Like there was just so much to do, and it's no wonder that, that, like, it inspired you. I'm more shocked that it hasn't, like, there aren't more people talking about it inspiring them just because there was so much to it. And, like, on the other side of kind of the Flash game coin, I guess, you have a lot of people that, still will talk about how Newgrounds,
Hmm.
was, like, where they got started, or what influenced them to get, like, learn about things and get into it and such. Whereas, Neopets was a huge thing. I think it still might be. They have a trading card game now, which is weird.
Yeah,
But, like, it's still a thing. So, like, I'm shocked more people aren't talking about being influenced by just the everything of it. You know what I mean?
I see some people, but I think they're only now starting to notice how much impact Neopets had on them. But they usually, from at least some people that I have seen online, they just didn't notice until now, which is also interesting.
Yes, but I think that's also really neat that you can go so long and then one day wake up and be like, "Oh, hey, this thing is what
Yeah.
started me down this path." Like, when you really start thinking of, like, "Why am I doing this?" You're like, "Oh, because the soup fairy," or something
Yes.
like that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, so Isidore, I am also curious, not to aggressively change the topic or what have you, but
Mhm.
I'm wondering, like, What what is it that made you wanna do your own engine? Was it mostly the tools and the fact that kept reverse engineering Unity, or was there something specific that you wanted and, like, that was your path to it?
I think it was mostly about sustainability because I usually it's very hard for me to get bored of things. Like, so if I like a specific kind of games, and the engine itself is very like RPG Maker inspired, but it's like it has a lot of stuff, but it was first inspired RPG Maker. Like, I wanted something that for future games I could just reuse the same stack, and we didn't have to re-implement all the systems we did for future games. And I think that was the main motivation. Like, we actually own the tools, like we are the owners, and we control it, which direction it goes. And it's totally okay to be super opinionated or super specialized because we are the ones deciding, and we want to make games in that direction. So we don't want to generalize. And I think that was one of the main motivations of, okay, should we do this or not? And also, and there's a technical thing. It's just I wanted to use the latest C sharp. I think Unity didn't don't use the latest C sharp, and I was no, I can't leave like this. And then that was the first thing that made us decide.
So, I again, I can empathetically relate and understand through that. As someone that went from, uh when I was using Visual Studio, from someone that went from Visual Basic
Uh-huh.
and COBOL, and other mainframe nonsense, uh,
Mhm.
and then had to use C sharp for work. I C sharp is beautiful. I loved C sharp. It made sense to me in ways for things that C++ plus plus and C did not. So, like,
Mhm.
yeah, no, I can perfectly understand being like, well, I want to use the newest C sharp, so I'm making my own thing. Like, I get it. I think there's
Uh,
probably a lot of people too that would go, I get it. So, like, yeah, that's awesome. As well as, like, of course, obviously the sustainability of it and being able to, like, you're not going to lose a lot of time between games because you're building up your own tool deck, your own systems, your own mechanics, your own things that you're going to be familiar with, right? So, like,
Mhm.
yeah, so that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I apologize if you touched on that earlier. And it went in and out the ears or what have you, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, I am also curious about this, and I'm sorry if it's going to be Neopets. um, Actually, I don't know if it will be just because of how I'm gonna
Uh,
phrase this, but, like, was there a game, and also to the context of this a little more, sorry, I'm dancing around getting to it, but, like, you know, you're Brazilian, so you grew up in Brazil,
mhm.
which, and you can feel free to elaborate further as needed on this, but, like, for those that don't know, Brazil wasn't always or still probably isn't, um, one of the places that had like the the greatest and newest consoles because
Mhm, mhm.
just the way the system of everything
Yeah.
is with just the everything, right? So like I know Brazil had a lot of time using older consoles. Like the lifespan of certain older ones just kept going and going and going and what have you, what have you. So like, just putting that context out there first or what have you, but like are there are there games that you enjoyed as a kid that you don't think would, like, hold up today that, like, you still look fondly back on, though?
So yeah, so as I was growing up, there was something interesting that happened. I think because I was in Brazil, and also because like, oh, okay, so I grew up as a girl, so they wouldn't give me just video games like from my family. So a lot of the times I wanted to play a video game and I didn't know how to express which video game it was. So for example, I wanted to play Smash Brothers because it looks pretty cool. And okay, but I didn't have nothing from I didn't have no console from Nintendo, and I didn't know that the name was Smash Brothers. I just knew what it looked like. So then I would just play like Digimon All Stars because it was what it had on Xbox. So that thing was the most fun that I had. I loved playing that, and if I play nowadays, I think it's really bad. I tried looking it up, and it's just it's really weird. And like there was another one too. So I wanted to play GTA because everyone talked about it, but I didn't know how to ask or say, "Oh, I want to play GTA." So I just play whatever there was. Like my dad had, and it was True Crime for PS2, and it's just a game that it's you're not even supposed to do things from GTA. Like there is one mission specifically that you're on the city, so I would just never progress that one mission just so I could hang around, just like you would do in GTA, I guess. And I would think that that was GTA. And I think that's not a good game. I tried listening to the soundtrack and it's not good. It's like really bad. I was like, well, like I absolutely love playing it when I was a child.
So so thank you for that, and, I unfortunately can't relate to that, so I I understand what you're saying, I can't relate to
Yeah.
that on a personal level, so, like, thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry that you that you went through that. I don't know the right wording here, but, like,
I think it was interesting. It's pretty funny.
yes, it is funny because, like, I've what I can understand is, like, the trying to figure out a game and, like,
Uh-huh.
playing through what you have available to you and hoping that you find what it is you are looking for, right? And,
Uh-huh.
like, just the idea that you went, "Well, I'd like to play Smash Bros, but I have this Digimon game. I think it's similar." Or, like, wanting to and I'm making the assumption that when you wanted to play, like, GTA 3 or what have you, you were really just looking to go out and cause mayhem and, like, run cars
Yeah,
over and
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
where, if I'm not mistaken, True Crime, you play as a police officer, if I'm
Yeah, I
not
know. You're a
so,
police
like
officer.
so, like, you can't really do that, so, like, I unders like, I thank you. I like the idea that as a police officer in a game, you were trying to do crime in a game that was
Yes.
probably set up to not let you do crime.
Yes, like, I think the thing that I tried to do in the game, I tried to find someone that had a pink car, and it's a pink car that I really loved. So it was usually like someone that was stealing something, so I would go after them. But then I would cause havoc. So like police starting to come after me, like helicopters, and I just wanted the car. But then at the point that I got the car, it was really destroyed because that's how I was able to like to caught them. So I have to go with the car almost getting fire and it could explode at any moment to the repair shop. And sometimes I had the car, but I couldn't make it in time for the repair shop. And then I lost the car. But that was my main thing that I like to do.
So so I'm gonna ask kind of like the other side of this coin then as well. And like, you know, do you because it sounds like you think remember, like, the nostalgia for these games is fun, and I think that's always a beautiful thing when you can think back on a game regardless of how it holds up,
Mhm.
and, like, you have such lovely memories of it, right? I think we all have memories of games like that for our own various reasons, and I'm wondering, the other side of the coin for this one, did you was there a favorite game that, that you played when you were a kid that is still, like, your favorite game or still a game that you hold, like, is gonna make you feel good, kinda like the Ratatouille game
Yeah.
or what have you?
Yeah, that's Ragnarok Online.
Um, so please elaborate as to why.
Yeah,
I don't wanna
yeah.
interject on Ragnarok. I wanna let you talk about Ragnarok.
So I love the whole game. The soundtrack is beautiful. The art is beautiful. I like I like how they have all this cute art, and underneath the like this cute art, there's like very deep systems. So you can have all these different builds, and you have all these different worlds. And I don't know, it was such an accessible and fun way, and you could have pets, and everything was very cute, and I love how they approached that. It was so good, and I played like 3 years ago, and still holds up. It doesn't have the same community, so it's not the same. But the game, and again, I think it's something that I don't see games capture it as Ragnarok did nowadays. But when I replayed it, I could see, okay, this is real. There was something there. Like this feels good.
So, thank you for mentioning Ragnarok. And I'm glad that you enjoy that it holds up so fondly for you.
Uh-huh.
And, like, you know, not I have to be careful because Ragnarok is Ragnarok. I'm wondering because you talked about, so many classes or what have you. I'm sure you have a few of them in your brain that you would go through. So I'm wondering what were your if you were, your top 2 class setups if you
Mhm.
remember.
Oh, I
I'm
was
sure you do.
assassin. So assassin, and there was the third. So they made a third class, and that was like guillotine cross. But I also like playing ranger just because there was a lot of very OP skills that you could use. That was just fun. It's just fun how OP you can be as well.
So, thank you for that. You know, I So yes, like, I too enjoyed a lot of Ragnarok.
Uh-huh,
I too also have many fond memories for a lot of the same reason that
uh-huh.
you said. It was like I started playing when it first had its English release.
Oh,
Um
cool.
Sorry, I'm now having like nonstop flashbacks to that being like
Uh-huh,
over
uh-huh.
20 years ago now.
Yes.
Um Jesus, I'm old. Anyway, um, but like I can relate to the enjoyment of Ragnarok and like being able to just think back to it and be like just knowing that it was fun and like having fun memories for. So like I'm glad that you also enjoyed it because it's I don't understand it completely, but like the amount of people that I've spoken to just in general, Ragnarok rarely comes up and it's weird to me that it so rarely comes up because it was such a fantastic MMO. It was such a
Uh,
fantastic little game that anyway, I'm I'm happy I'm happy to hear you bring up Ragnarok just because again, it's such a fantastic game and like, I know there's certain projects in the works, not from Gravity or
Mhm.
what have you, but like I know there are games that are influenced or inspired by Ragnarok that are kind of trying to exist or being worked on as well. So like I'm happy that other people are kind of trying to like carry the game on or like the
Yeah,
spirit of it or what have you because you know again as someone that spent a lot of time playing it and I'm sure you can relate
yeah.
the temptation to have a game that's a little more modern that takes a lot of the influence and a lot of the charm and a lot of the magic just with some more newer stuff or what have you that's an awesome thing, right? So like
Mhm.
anyway, again, thank you for mentioning Ragnarok. I'm glad that you played it. I'm glad that you enjoyed
Yeah,
it and that you think so fondly of it.
yeah,
Um
I'm happy you played too. It's a really good game.
Yeah, I have to be very careful because if I'm not, it'll just be one of those things where I just try and keep circling back to Ragnarok because
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
what I did. Um, anyway, I'm going to change the subject. We're going to change
Uh-huh.
the subject, and this will make it probably a little easier for me to not circle back. Um,
Okay.
but I'm wondering, outside of games, like what is it that you do to relax? What do you enjoy doing that isn't game related or what have you? Now, in all fairness, if it's just games, completely respectable, completely understandable. But I still like to ask this because if there are
Uh-huh.
things that you enjoy that aren't games, I'd like to give you a chance to talk about them because like you're not just a game developer, you're a human being with your own likes and enjoyments and what have you, right?
Yeah, of course. There is a lot of games, but I do other things too to unwind. I do read a lot of mangas and watch a lot of animes. I do that more often than not, but it's a good way for me to unwind and be inspired. I also draw, but I don't draw for games, so I just like drawing in general. And sometimes I use it like for when giving talks. I do like little drawings, but I also like just learning, and I love like storyboards. I think it's so fascinating, but I like to do that for fun and sometimes to express myself. That's one way that I have to just to relax.
So thank you for sharing that. I understand the like doing something for yourself, just for your kind of own expressing or what have
Uh-huh.
you. Because like, yeah, that's always nice. And like it's not always about trying to like make it trying to think of the right phrasing here. Like it's nice that you have something that's not about being part of making money, right? Because like
Mhm,
you have
mhm.
if you have like a hobby or what have you, I know there always seems to be a lot of like pressure to like turn your hobbies into like work or
Yeah.
what have you, right? But it's like it's so nice just to be able to enjoy doing something, being like, I don't need to make money off of this. I don't care. And just have it be for you or have it be for you in such a way, like private or otherwise, but have it be for you in such a way that you're like, this is just what I do. This is what
Mhm,
enjoy doing, right? So
mhm.
like I'm happy that you have something like that. Uh, I imagine it sounds fun. I'm not good at drawing, so hence the it sounds fun. That's not something that I have the capabilities to do. So like,
Uh-huh.
sorry, I have to be careful to not make it sound dismissive. It's like I just
No, of
suck at
course.
it. So like, it's not fun for me. I get stressed out.
That's understandable.
Um, but I am curious for this one because, like, you said you read a lot of manga and you watch a lot of anime. I'm wondering if someone came to you and they were like, I'm gonna bug you a few things for this, by the way. So like, buckle up, I guess.
Mhm.
But if someone came to you and they're like, I'm looking for some manga to read, is there like a top three that you have right now that you'd be like, oh, you should check these out?
Oh, that would be Hunter x Hunter. Hunter x Hunter for sure. Then probably Dungeon Mesh, but I did just read that, so I might be biased. And then, and then for a third one, I don't know at the top of my head. I think I might be also be biased at this one, but I would just say Hunter x Hunter.
So Hunter x Hunter, Dungeon Meshi, Hunter x Hunter again,
Yes.
basically. Now, at the risk of it being the same answers, I'm wondering if someone asked for anime for like a top three that you'd recommend.
Okay, so there is Hunter x Hunter, of course. I'm trying to think about another one. Dun 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 was really cool, but it's hard to get into if you don't watch animes. I think there's a lot of animes. That's a problem too. If you don't watch animes, it's hard to get it. So there's some animes that's like, okay, if you don't watch animes, then you should start with this just so you can understand the language because they make a lot of assumptions almost. But except Hunter x Hunter, Hunter x Hunter you should just watch this.
So yes, I understand what you mean about like how there are some series that are not really ones that you can easily recommend to start with for
Uh-huh.
people, right? And like, for whole various amounts of reasons, some of them are just not really easy to jump into. There's one that I can't remember the name of, and there's a stupid video, like little music video someone made of it. Um, I don't remember the name of it. It's a dumb thing, but I mentioned it to a friend. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And he's like, the whole series is basically Japanese pun. Like
Uh-huh.
every gag, it's like, it's not like a little 5-minute bit one. It's, every episode, like there's the plot lines and everything are just it's heavy on like Japanese puns and language jokes. And
Uh-huh.
it's like how could you recommend that to someone that well, one, how they would ever translate that is beyond me, but
Yeah.
like how you
Yeah.
could recommend that to someone where it's like, okay, so you really need to understand that rabbits on the moon make mochi
Yes.
by
Yes.
beating the hell out of it. It's like, okay, because that's what this whole episode is. It's a bunch of language puns about that. Like, okay, like how do you recommend that to someone, right? So like I
Yeah.
understand what you mean by like, how certain ones are hard to suggest or like tell people to get into.
Uh-huh.
Um, like for me, for example, one of the first series outside of what was available on TV for me, which would have been like Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon,
Mhm.
um, Digimon, Pokemon. I'm really struggling to remember Gundam Wing,
Mhm.
like that kind of stuff. Because again, I'm old. But
Mhm.
like one of the first series I jumped into was Evangelion, and
Yeah.
as a
It's really good.
12-year-old, 13-year-old, that's not a thing I would ever be like, "Oh, hey, kid, you wanna watch some" this is
Yeah.
what you start with, right? Like, it's so, like, I understand the how difficult it is to, like, just recommend stuff. Um,
Mhm.
and yes, it is a fantastic series. 13-year-old probably shouldn't watch it because, well, in today's world, there's a whole bunch of stuff where, like, it on the scale of where it sits in terms of heaviness is very different.
Yeah,
But,
that's
like,
fair.
when it first came out, it was not something a 13-year-old should just go into blind.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And I think the majority of the people who watch was like 13-year-olds because they're, "Oh, it's just like Gundam. Must be fun."
you yes, exactly. It's just like Gundam. If yes, sure. I think that's a wonderful pitch to give to people that you wanna actually,
Yeah, of
Evangelion's not
course
it's not that traumatizing now. Yeah, screw it. That's a wonderful pitch. Just go for it. Um
Yes.
But along the same vein, I'm wondering, because those are the 3 that you'd recommend. Or like those were Hunter x Hunter was the recommended 3 of the 6, 5 times.
Yes.
Um, I'm wondering and again, I'm gonna make the assumption Hunter x Hunter is gonna pop out here.
Okay.
But like, what are your favorite mangas?
Oh, my favorite ones. Okay, so this I kinda like when I recommended, I was kind of thinking of my favorite ones, but I
Oh,
could
okay.
take a different angle.
No, that works just as well.
Mhm.
I think that's a bit of a dirty question because like you're obviously you're gonna try and recommend your favorite
Yeah.
ones, right? So like yeah, that is on me, but thank you
Yeah.
for those recommendations. And if I'm not mistaken, just to touch on it, I think Hunter x Hunter or Hunter x Hunter, I'm always not sure how it's supposed to be pronounced.
Yeah, me
Um,
neither.
I've I have honestly heard someone say the X is supposed to be crossed because Japanese.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so I don't know. I never know who to trust, so I just sort of wing it every time. But
Mhm.
like I'm I imagine you're looking forward to unless it's been canceled already, but I imagine you're looking forward to the fact that the manga for Hunter x Hunter was being uh restarted or something.
Yeah, I know that okay, so there's a lot of hiatus, right? But the author keeps these photos, these cryptic photos of just a number written on the paper, and there's like 400,000 likes, and I was always like one of those likes. I was just like, "No, keep going, you can do it." And then he stops again, but then one time he'll get back. So I was always like cheering him on that.
Well, yeah, I'm I'm gonna double check this one really quick, because I want to make sure that I'm saying the right person for this. Um, yes, it is. So I like how the or the author of Hunter x Hunter, Togashi, his wife is the creator of Sailor Moon, Takuchi or
Yes.
Takashi or
Yeah.
whatever it's pronounced, and I
Yeah.
like that she was helping out with it. When
Yeah.
asked about if it was difficult to use his style, she just went, "No, I just draw as bad as I can, and it works perfectly."
No,
Um
they're both very sweet. Yeah, I love them.
Um, but yeah, for I kind of say this to anyone that's like passionate and really enjoys that series. I'm really, I'm always happy to hear when like he gets enough strength or when something is working in the direction of him releasing more stuff, just because I know
Mhm.
what kind of halted on like like that there was more to come kind of thing. So like I'm always happy to hear that like those fans will get to see and have more of it because like there's always stuff that people enjoy that gets put on hold. Like
Yeah.
myself, for example, Berserk um,
Yeah.
or Vagabond or what have you, where like different reasons, unfortunately,
Mhm.
for some cases and what, but like, it's always nice when there's a series that you're like, I know it's going to be ended one day. And like, it's even if it's slow, that it still gets put out. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm hopeful. I try not to get too hopeful, but I'm always happy when he posts a new picture with something written on the paper.
And yes, I'll keep my fingers crossed for you as well as all the other Hunter x Hunter fans.
Yeah.
Cause like, yeah, it's unfortunate the reason that um it's unfortunate the reasoning behind like why it's so
Yeah.
slow and so fingers crossed for everyone involved in that cuz it would just be nice for his health to be good but also, you know, for people to be able to enjoy what he's wanting to continue working on, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, Isidore, I'm going to hit you with this. I feel this is a good time to maybe do this to you.
Mhm.
And basically I'm just gonna hit you sideways with the lightning round. And now these are, as I mentioned before we started recording, these are random, lighthearted, nonsensical
Yeah.
questions. Uh, they're you can answer them as quick as you want or as off the cuff as you want. There's no judgment involved in them, so
Okay.
you are free to answer them however you feel fit. Um, Now, I will also advise the longer you sit on them and think, the more dangerous they get. And I
Okay.
think you'll understand that after I fire a
Okay.
few off at you.
Okay.
So, which video game character do you think is most likely to put orange juice over their cereal?
Oh, video game character. Probably Shadowheart from Baldur's Gate. I don't know.
Yeah,
I improvise.
fair enough. Fair enough. Um, which video game character do you feel is most likely to text a picture of their feet at 2 a.m. to you and ask, "Do these look the same size?"
Oh, oh, that's probably like there's Sans, the skeleton in Undertale. I guess he would do that.
Thank you, thank you. Which video game character do you think is most likely to be pro Salem witch trials? So in this case, on the side of the witch trials.
Uh-huh. Oh, I see. Oh, the maybe the guy that manages the store in Stardew Valley.
Yes, I can see it. He runs a cult or something,
Yeah.
right? I could
I
see it,
can
yes.
see him like, "Oh, no, no, you see, you have to understand," like
You have to understand, it was good
Yeah.
for the economy or
Yes,
something like that.
exactly.
Um, but no, thank you for that. That was the lightning round question, effectively. Um,
Uh,
so thank you for that. Now I'm all out of order for how I usually ask these questions. So like,
mhm,
thank you for bearing with me while I kind of bounce around more so than normal.
mhm,
Um, but I want to ask you this one because like we talked about a game that you enjoyed from your childhood or games
mhm.
that don't hold up. Like your favorite game, the game that you hold so fondly. I'm wondering because like you're working on, right now you're working on Neverway.
Mhm,
And, I'm not about to try and like prod into, the inner workings of Neverway or what have you. But like just from what you've said, it's like a life sim, um, with some horror elements and what have you, what have you. I'm wondering like what it is that makes games enjoyable to you. Because I know that most of the time when people are making games, they're making games for themselves first and
mm,
foremost, right? Games that they would
mhm,
enjoy. So I'm
mhm.
like wondering what it is that you enjoy about games. Like when you look at a game, you're like, oh, this is gonna be for me. Like what kind of things draw you to them?
I really like when the game feels alive. And like I think that was something that I saw in the Half-Life documentary that really stuck with me is like when the game reacts to you. So like if you punch a wall, like the wall has a little mark, and that usually like it's very subtle, but you suddenly feel, oh, okay, this world is seeing me. And then when you are immersed into this world, then you can just make up situations, and then suddenly they all feel real, like the things start to feel real. So if there's even an NPC, like if you make things react accordingly to what you do, suddenly like, okay, this feels very real. And then you can have a lot of experiences that you wouldn't have otherwise, or it can just help you that you pass through in your real life because of this magical world that you just made up. I don't know, I just really like this feeling, and when you actually feel like you're immersed in that world and you get invested in, just sometimes it can be the characters in the story, or sometimes you just like the world, like in Ragnarok, for example, you like being there and existing there.
So, thank you for sharing that. And I'm wondering, like, and again, I'm going to put you on the spot with this, so my apologies. But like, are there any games that come to mind when you're like describing that feeling and what have you? Are there any games that you look at that you've played that you've enjoyed, or games that you still play and enjoy, or what have you,
Mhm.
outside of Ragnarok, as you mentioned that
Mhm.
give you that feeling?
I like even like playing Baldur's Gate 3 recently, like it gave me that feeling. A lot of other game that is very good at doing that. It's just Zelda. Is like even like I was replaying Link to the Past, and I didn't grow up playing it, but when I played it, I was like, oh, okay, like everything there somehow feels real. Like things kind of react. You can do stuff, and then sometimes you cannot do them, but for some reason that makes sense. And so there's like a range of how you can do that, but I think that would be like two different games that kind of make it happen. But it can be, usually it's RPGs that kind of, because they have the verbs and expressions to like achieve this kind of immersion for me.
So I'm curious for this one, just because you've
Uh-huh.
said, like for Link to the Past, it was something you didn't play years and years ago, right? So like
Mhm.
I'm going to make the presumption or assumption maybe that when
Mhm.
you did first play it, that you had already played a bunch of other games,
Mhm.
maybe even some of the newer Zelda games or what have you. Now this doesn't strictly have to be about Zelda,
Mhm.
but like you mentioned it, so it's a good one to just sort of ask explicitly about. But feel free to like take this to any games that you feel relate or what have you. But like going back to playing older games now after you've you know,
Mhm.
experienced newer games and like how they worked
Mhm.
out. Um, like how I'm losing myself to try and get to the question. I apologize.
Mhm.
How like when you do that, like I'm wondering how it is that you like enjoy them, how they feel comparatively to newer games. I'm sorry, like I'm struggling to try and put into words because the
Uh-huh.
logic behind the question is, like I'm in my 30s. I grew up
Mhm.
playing Nintendo, right?
Mhm.
So like a lot of these games I've existed and participated in and had played and what have you for the technology as it's grown and gotten better and bigger and what have you. So like I'm always curious and I always kind of I don't ask this that often because I always forget to.
Mhm.
But like, I'm always curious how playing older games when that have come out well after or that came out well before and you've like already experienced like the newer games or the newer
Mhm.
technologies, like how that feels to you. I really hope what I'm trying to ask kind of makes sense, and I
Okay.
apologize if it's just nonsense.
I'll do my best to.
Thank you. I
uh,
appreciate any attempt at whatever nonsense I just spit out.
so, like personally, like one of my big references, like when I'm making games too, is like AAA studios, but in the 90s and early 2000s. So like that did games like Zelda Link to the Past or even like Earthbound that did like Mother 3. Like I just love how much depth they have with very little verbs. So there's not a lot you could do and the art is limited. A lot of things are limited. But then within those limitations you can do so much stuff and everything's so polished. And just the level of polish it almost feels like, oh, I can feel all the care that went through this game because you can see how many times they iterated over each of the things that you're doing. And for me that's just very inspiring, and it's fun to play. And they're, I think, mostly due to technical limitations, the team couldn't be as big as AAA nowadays, but I think there was a charm to it that I really enjoy.
So thank you for answering that, for doing your best with me giving
Mhm.
you just nonsense. And I understand what you're saying. And like
Mhm.
I think the focusing might be the wrong word, but focusing on like the amount of polish and pushing what they were doing and what they could do within the limitations of the system, I think that's a really cool thing to like look at because
Mhm.
again, like that for me, like Super Nintendo games are just Super Nintendo games, right? That's just what they were. And
Mhm.
like that's an interesting perspective to be able to look back and be like they did their best with what they had and they made this awesome game, this awesome project or what have you. And like that's not to say the games weren't awesome
Mhm.
then. It's
Mhm.
just that's not a thing that I would ever think to myself and be like, "Oh, they did their best with what they had and they made this awesome thing. I just made this awesome thing," right? But no,
Mhm.
thank you. I really appreciate that perspective. And in comparison to like, when you hold it up against, you know, um like, just even, like, PS2 era games or whenever it is that you were, like, Xbox, like, whenever it is that you were coming into your prime exposure, I guess,
Mhm.
like, regardless of all that, it's an interesting perspective to just, like, have it on the comparison to, like, newer games, and also that your perspective to when you work on games now is in a similar vein to like how you appreciate the older games in that
Mhm.
you are like you're just trying to work within like a minimal or a restricted set of um like you're giving yourself limitations and you're
Mhm.
doing your best like when you're producing everything that you're working on and like the things that you are uh marking as important and considering and all of that. I think that's just a fantastic approach because like it makes sense. And
Mhm.
knowing this or hearing you talk about this makes sense, like, when you look at the limited palette of Neverway, right? Because
Mhm.
it's, from what's been released and what's been shared, like, knowing that, like, how you appreciate older games and, like, how that influences you now, that's I think that's just awesome. Like,
Oh,
just
thank you.
it makes perfect sense, and, like, I've spoken with someone else, and they were working on a game or I've spoken with several people that have worked kind of with a similar, intended limitation, like the Game
Mhm.
Boy Color aesthetic or the Advance aesthetic or what have you, what have you, what have you, and, like, one of the things I always love, and I don't know why this is, I honestly don't, but it's the limited palette of the color palette, like in
Mhm.
the examples I'm looking at right now for Neverway, for example, it's almost monotone. I think
Mhm.
monotone is the right term. Um,
Mhm.
but like I always like that style. And like I'm sorry, right now I'm just trying to say really I the what you presented so far, what you and Pedro
Mhm.
and everyone else that for Cold Blood for Neverway, it looks fantastic is really what I'm
Thank you.
getting at.
Thank you. Yeah, and the thing is like that I love, it's like limitations, they have like trade-offs too. So we do like low palette, and then what we so we and there are a lot of advantages to that. So then Pedro can do animations way faster because there's less colors. So we have a lot of custom animations in the game because it is so fast to do stuff because there isn't as many colors. So we always try to leverage the limitations to the maximum we can.
Yes, yes, I understand what you're saying, and it makes
Yeah.
sense. And also, like you're also making the engine, so you also get
Yes.
to you also get to tweak it to work even better for that,
Yeah.
right? It's not like you're reverse engineering Unity
Yes.
code to work better for you. You just made this thing to work better for you and everyone involved. So again, anyway, sorry. Just I just wanted to I would have felt remiss if I didn't touch on how wonderful Neverway looks
Thank
um
you.
from what you guys have shared so far and what have you. Um
Mm.
so yeah, sorry. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned some of that and we found a way naturally there for me to gush a little about, the awesomeness of how what you guys are doing looks.
Thank you.
And now again, I don't want to take too much more of your time. However, I do want to hit you up with one more
Mhm.
question or what have you, and then I promise I'll let you get on with your Friday evening and what have you. And I thank you so much again, just for letting me steal this time, and hopefully you're okay with me stealing a little more. But I did
No, of
want to
course, it's
touch
okay.
on awesome, thank you. I did want to touch on something we spoke briefly about before we started recording, and that was outer sloth. And like the at the time of recording this on April 11th, it was, I think, just yesterday or the day before or what have you, the announcement for um for the funding, I guess is the way to put it. So I just want to I'm not trying to dig too deep and have you
Mhm.
share too much or what have you, but like I just wanted to ask like, you know, how exciting is that to like be one of the games that is part of their funding?
Oh, it's really cool. Like I really love all the other games involved and the team that it's there's Sam, Victoria, and Forrest. And I don't know, the whole idea of Otter's Love, I just think it's good for the game industry in general and just pushes it forward into a much better direction and encourages other studios to do the same, which I think it's really awesome. And we were funded by them. It was about July last year, and then we were working in secret ish in Neverway, and then finally announced as of yesterday. But then so we have some time working with them, but it's just really cool. They literally just give us the money and then give us the freedom to do whatever we want. So we have a lot of weird ideas and we don't have to prove why they work. We can just work on them and they trust us. So I really appreciate the trust that they put on the teams. I think that's really important, especially if people keep saying, right, they want like weird or like creative or unique games. And I think the way you do that is just trusting the developers and letting them do their thing and seeing how it goes. And I understand that's risky, but I think that's where you get the really cool games.
So thank you for sharing that. And you touched on something that I've said a lot, and that basically is, along the same vein of, had the freedom to make your own game, like to make weird little games or
Hmm.
what have you. That's always been one of my favorite things for indie games is,
Hmm.
you know, that it's usually it's the people, the team behind an indie game is making a game that they want to make, a game that they want to play or for themselves or what have you. And like I've always loved indie games that just do what they want to do and aren't afraid to just be weird, to just kind of
Hmm.
throw things at the wall and see what works. And like the idea of Outer Sloth and other because I know there's a few other that exists in similar ways or have came
Mhm.
into existence in other similar ways and what have you. But like the idea of something like Outer Sloth funding, projects like this, funding projects like Neverway, where you don't need to prove anything. You just get to be trusted to make a weird little game
Mhm.
that everyone just is hoping is the wrong word. I'm trying to think of the right word, but everyone is like just be like, yeah, I trust this is going to be cool. I
Yeah.
trust this is going to be wonderful, right? And like again, I've already gushed enough about just from what you've shared of what you guys have shared of Neverway to be like, yeah, it looks fantastic. But like, I love the idea of that you guys are a part of that get trusted to just make something that people will hopefully
Yeah.
is the wrong word, people better enjoy when it comes out. Just like all indie games. I wanna be very clear on that one,
Yeah.
that, people better enjoy indie games. They don't realize how
Yeah.
beautiful, of a product they get to experience for a lot of indie games. But, like, I'm happy to know like, I was so happy and excited when you guys, when it was announced that you guys were, like, part of this because it's fantastic, it's awesome. So, like,
Yeah.
I don't wanna say congratulations, that feels weird to me, but, like, I'm so happy for you guys, and I'm happy that it's working out, and, like,
Mhm.
I'm positive it's going to have nothing but good, good results on all sides. Because like, this is,
Mhm.
the rising tide raises all ships and what have you, right? So, like, yeah, sorry. I don't know where I'm going with this other than I'm excited for you guys, I'm happy for you guys, and, like, I'm positive this is going to be a great thing for
Thank
everyone.
you. Yeah, thank you. I'm really happy about it too.
I'm happy to hear that because like, again, as you mentioned, they just sort of let you do what you wanna do, and, like,
Mhm.
what a wonderful relationship that your funder, your publisher, or however, like, whatever the terms, conditions, phrasing, whatever you wanna it's gonna come out in the
Mhm.
wash as,
Mhm.
but, like, just being trusted to do that is I'm happy for you guys. Like, it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Now, Isadora, I'm gonna do my best to not loop back on that one. So to do that,
Okay.
I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna move on
Okay.
and work
Okay.
you towards the door so that way I don't steal more of your time. Um, However, I did want to say if there was anything you wanted to discuss, a cool game, something else you guys are working on or that you're working on or interested or in or what have you, or something you feel more people should just be more aware of, by all means, the floor is yours as well. Please let everyone know where they can find more information about you, which will also be including in the episode description.
Yeah. We have let's see. Well, I have my website, but we also have a very cool website for Neverway. It's very Neopets inspired.
Amazing.
So that's been really cool. And I think that's mostly it. Now that I got through the Neverway announcement, I just yeah.
That's fair enough. And,
Yeah.
as I said, Isidore, I'm not gonna steal up too much more of time, especially because,
Mhm.
like, you said you just got through the Neverway announcement, and, like, this is the weekend after that. So I imagine the amount of, like, nerves and everything that's been building up. Like, I hope this weekend you get to relax
Yeah.
or whatever it is that you call relaxing. I hope you
Yeah.
get to do that thing so that way, you can the I don't know if anxiety is the right word, but, like, the buildup of all of this, you can just let it sink in and, like, sleep and not have to
Yeah.
worry about, like, the everything involved with it. I hope what I'm saying makes sense
Yeah.
or
No, of
is
course.
finding a home.
Yeah, look, so like it's funny. Like the thing that I do a lot with Pedro that we do just to relax, like we play Overwatch. So we just play a lot of Overwatch. And then like okay, we took it out of the system, then we are calmer. So that's one thing we did to like calm ourselves down.
So, I'm hoping that you 2 find even more ways like, I hope you enjoy more Overwatch, there we go.
Thank
That's the way
you.
to phrase it. I
Thank
hope
you.
you enjoy more Overwatch over the weekend and that you
Thank you.
guys can relax.
Yeah.
Um, but Isadora, as I said, there wasn't anything else I wanted to bug you with. So if there
Hmm.
wasn't anything else, I will 100% let you go.
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, thanks for inviting me here too.
Isidore, the pleasure was all mine. I really, like I said, I appreciate that you made the time to talk with me. I'm the timing of everything. I'm glad it worked out for
Yeah,
you,
yes.
given how stressful everything. And we didn't talk about that you were at GDC, and if I'm not mistaken, you did your first talk, and there's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of stuff that led up to this that would have just been like a whole ride for you. So like, I'm happy that that ride sounded like it all went well, and I hope that the ride continues to go well for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And again, as I said, if there wasn't anything else, I will get out of your hair and let you enjoy your evening.
All right. Have a good evening too.
So thanks again to Isadora for making time to have this conversation with me, and thank you for joining us on the Red Tunic podcast, as well as a special thanks to Roland Jankeys for the use of music from the title track from Roads Deep. And be sure to check out the episode description for links to socials, websites, and other means that will allow you to learn more about or support Isadora and the podcast. While you're doing that, share, like, follow, and whatever else you think makes the algorithm work. Thanks, till next time.